Hi, I'm Pastor Taylor Stempniak, the pastor here at Immanuel Lutheran Church, and you're joining us for The Peak. This past Sunday was Palm Sunday, one of my favorite Sundays in the church year, where Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey and the crowds gather alongside. They wave palm branches and sing Hosanna. They put their coats and the palm branches on the road so that Jesus' donkey doesn't even have to touch the dust in the road. That's how holy they see him in this moment. We have lots of little Palm Sundays throughout the gospel where Jesus will perform a miracle. He'll feed a crowd of 5,000. He'll turn water into wine. He will make the eyes of the blind man see. And after each of these miracles, there are people that want to follow Jesus, and they'll start following Jesus, only to find themselves turning back. Because the reality is, we really like the miracles. We love it when Jesus is able to perform for us. Jesus is able to show us something that is cool or improves our lives. But whenever Jesus starts teaching, things get a little more complicated. Because Jesus' ministry isn't just about feeding crowds of people or about the excitement that comes along with miraculous healing. Jesus' ministry also asks us to live in a way that's different than the ways of the world. Jesus asks us to be humble, to serve our neighbor, to not look for the Ferrari or the big horse, but to ride into town on a donkey, to be kind, not only to our neighbor who is our friend, but our neighbor who is our enemy, to turn the other cheek. Jesus' ministry teaches us a way to live in this world that isn't always popular or easy. And so while sometimes we come for the miracles, oftentimes we leave because of the teaching. And Palm Sunday gives us an opportunity to address that, to see that just out in the open, because these very same people that sang Hosanna are the people that will cry out, "Crucify him." There's tension in that. Because you see, this crowd had gathered here because Jesus had just risen Lazarus from the dead. His friend had died. And while he wept, he cried for Lazarus to get up and walk, and he did. What a miracle. Nothing like this had been seen before. And there was a response. The crowd was excited to see what Jesus would do next. But when Jesus continues to ask for them to be patient, kind, humble, it starts to go a little awry. And they reject Jesus and turn instead to somebody like Barabbas, who was this powerful freedom fighter who was unafraid to take on the problems of the world with violence and strength. Barabbas looked a lot different than this man we call Jesus, who was humble and kind and loving, even whenever he was facing oppression, even whenever he was facing cruelty at the hands of those who surrounded him. Barabbas was what we wanted to see in the world, where Jesus was what the world needed. And so whenever Jesus didn't give the crowd what they wanted any longer, when there weren't any more big splashy miracles to be performed, and instead Jesus is calling people to walk in the ways that he has walked, ultimately they reject him. But what's so cool about this day is Jesus, who knows all of this, who has prayed that the Lord would guide him, who knows that ultimately he will end up being crucified by this crowd that worships him. He still invites them to worship him. Oftentimes we view the church as a place where we have to be perfect, a place where we have to understand everything. We want to make the church into a museum for sinners where we all sit here in our perfection and we don't let anybody know that there might be something that we're struggling for, or struggling with. But the church isn't a museum of saints, it's a hospital for sinners. The church is supposed to be a place where we can come and worship God and admit that we are imperfect. Admit that we are part of the reason that Christ had to die, but also to worship and celebrate him. Because despite our imperfections and despite our confusions, God still shows up. God is still present in our lives. God is still crying out for us and calling to us to be a part of this beautiful narrative of the gospel. This place where we have been rescued despite not deserving it, but because Christ loves us that much. Palm Sunday gives us an opportunity to recognize that worship is for sinners, because sinners are the beloved children of God. And so let us come and worship Christ, who doesn't leave us in our confusion, doesn't leave us in our sin, and doesn't leave us to die, but sets us free from all these things to come and dwell with him forever, so that we may sing boldly and unafraid, Hosanna to the King of Kings.